Welcome to Practical Talk Time. I'm Sandy Wrobel, your host for the show. We have with us Elaine Kuzmeskus. She is an author, a medium, an astrologer, very well read, and a lot of time and research into her books. And this show, she's going to be talking about the art of mediumship. Welcome again,
Nice
Elaine, to our
Sandy.
show.
Yes.
And the art of mediumship, I think that is a topic probably a little bit more removed for people than the book on dreams. I think we all dream and we can relate to that, but I think many people wouldn't relate to mediumship and the art. So can you tell us what the art of mediumship is?
Well, it's my favorite book that I've written to date. I've written 6, but the art of mediumship really took me about 30 years to write because it takes that long to really learn all the aspects of mediumship. I started with psychometry, which is holding an article and reading the energy. And then I progressed to clairvoyance, where you see spirit, and clairaudience, where you talk to spirit. And then I progressed to trance mediumship. I went over to England and studied at the Arthur Findlay College. And I love doing trance. I do trance a lot. I teach classes in trance mediumship at our school, the New England School of Metaphysics. And in more recent years, I've been getting involved with physical mediumship. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes, I have, but you can explain it for our audience.
Yes, physical mediumship is the ability to communicate with spirit through a physical, tangible way that everybody in the room can see, hear, or get involved with. The first type of physical mediumship that I did was table tipping. A group of students and I studied table tipping. And now all we do is place our hands on a table, and within about, I'd say, 3 minutes, we get the table moving to the right and to the left, and you can actually talk to spirit with a table. Do you know how you do that, Sandy?
No, I have gone to Salem, Massachusetts at Halloween, and they had a psychic thing. It was dinner, and then they had and they just randomly called people up. They did it 3 or 4 times with the table tipping, and it rose. Not only did it rise, but it moved around.
Isn't that amazing?
And I thought, gee, I wonder, if there was something under the table. And afterwards, I lifted up the tablecloth. It was just one of the regular tablecloths of the restaurant. Well, nothing special.
Everyone's welcome to examine my tables when I do table tipping. I'm going to be doing this at this fall at the Mark Twain House. I'm doing a program October 9th in Hartford, and we're doing Seance 101, which is physical phenomena. We'll be doing table tipping. It's part of the program, and people are welcome to go up afterwards and examine the table. There's no magnets or wires, because I don't move the table, spirit moves it. And I always like to say we know there is spirit intelligence because you can ask questions through a table. What happens, you can program it. Perhaps the table will go right to left for a yes, and it might go north to south, for example, for a no. So you got a table going back and forth in one direction for yes, and back and forth in an opposite direction for no. And I've done quite a lot of table tipping, and I also sometimes like to see who the spirits are who are assisting us. So we will do the alphabet. And every time the table taps, that's the letter of the alphabet. One time we were practicing, and we heard 5 taps. So I said, A, B, C, E. Who do I know in spirit beginning with E? And I thought, Elwood Babbitt. Elwood Babbitt was a Western Mass medium that was an incredibly gifted trance medium. And I knew if anybody would come through and help me with table tipping, it would be Elwood. And I've done other things with physical phenomena. I also like to do psychic photography. And we were talking a bit about psychic photography just before the program. I know you enjoy it as well. Right,
and that can come out even unbeknownst to a photographer.
Absolutely. In fact, I wrote an article for Fate magazine. It was in August of 2013. And this particular article was about physical phenomena at Camp Chesterfield. You know, Camp Chesterfield has a wonderful museum. It's called the HEP Museum.
And can you tell our audience where Camp Chesterfield is?
Camp Chesterfield is in a little town in Chesterfield, Indiana. It's about 5 miles away from Anderson, Indiana. And they have this beautiful museum, and they have all the old-time spiritualist art. They have slate writing, where spirit communicates through slates. The old-time mediums would take children's slates, they put a little teeny bit of chalk in, just a sliver, tie it together with a leather rope, put them in the center of the table, and then everyone in the room would hold hands. And the medium would go into trance. And my teacher, Gladys Custon, said when she went to a slate writing seance at Camp Chesterfield, they could hear scratching on the slates. And they were there in the 1950s at Reverend Kenneth Custance and Reverend Gladys Custance. And they brought their dear friend, Mrs. Morse, with them. Mrs. Morse's husband had died the year before. Well, when Mrs. Morse opened her slate, there in her husband's handwriting was a message. And Dr. Morse wrote a very personal message to his wife, Gladys.
That other people wouldn't know.
No,
right?
It was in his handwriting,
Yes.
too.
I think a lot of times people think, oh, this is crazy. And the thing is, when you experience it for yourself, then you really realize that it's real.
It's amazing, it really is. The other thing that's amazing about Camp Chesterfield is they used to do, I say used to, do materialization seances. And I guess they got a reputation for some of the finest materializations that they had in the 1920s. They also do a great deal of what's called trumpet mediumship. I've been to 3 trumpet seances at Camp Chesterfield, and they're all very different. What they do is they have these long aluminum cones, they call trumpets, and they place the cone on the table, and then the room is made very, very dark, and the medium goes into trance. The one I went to was by Reverend Suzanne Greer, and Reverend Greer is a veteran medium over 40 years. She's Hungarian by descent, wonderful lady, and Ron and myself were in the group, and the trumpet actually rose from the table and went all around the room. And when the trumpet got close to you, I could hear a voice saying, "Hello, Elaine," and it was a familiar voice of my teacher, Kenneth Custance. My husband heard a voice, and the medium said, not everybody can see the trumpet because it was very dark, but I'm going to lower the trumpet. And the trumpet went around and tapped each of us on the toes, so we knew the trumpet was meeting. And that is an example of some of the finest trumpet mediumship I've seen. I've also went to a trumpet seance with Reverend Hoyt Robinette. And you've met Reverend Hoyt.
Yes, several times.
He's an incredibly gifted medium. And at his trumpet seance, we could hear the voice of our spirit guides talk to us, just as I'm talking to you in the room. I know it's not for everybody, and it certainly isn't for the faint at heart, but if you are a true believer, to hear your spirit guide talk to you. I had Harry Edwards talk to me and D.D. Hume. It is a thrill that you can never really duplicate. And they gave me personal messages. They talked about books that I were writing and things I was doing that nobody else in the room could have known. So that's incredibly evidential. In my article on physical phenomena at Camp Chesterfield, I have a picture of a spirit card, and this card was done by Reverend Hoyt Robinette. The interesting thing about it is done in the colors rust and lime green. I received this 6 months before my book, Connecticut Ghosts, came out, and when the book came out, the cover was done in rust and lime green, colors that I personally would not have chosen, but it did show that Spirit had a hand in putting the Connecticut Ghost cover together. So it's very interesting.
And that's done by the publisher.
Yes, it is. Yes, I'm going to be going out to Camp Chesterfield at the end of June to do 3 programs, one on channeling spirit, another on physical phenomena, and one of my favorites I'll be doing also is opening the third eye, helping people develop their clairvoyance.
Now, is it an all-day workshop that you do, or a weekend?
We usually do like a 4-hour workshop. I'll be working Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday. So this will be very interesting. And I enjoy going there because it's so dedicated to spiritual ideals of serving humanity and trying to develop our latent spiritual powers. So it's good.
Now, are you finding more people or fewer people interested in this as time is going on?
I think more people are, I like to say more people are waking up, Sandy. They're thinking about dreams, and they're thinking about the possibility of spirit communication. And they're also, I think many people know now what a medium is. One of the big discussions I had with the publisher was on the name of the book, and I felt it should be The Art of Mediumship. But they said, Elaine, are you sure everyone knows what mediumship is? I think today they do. And most people understand that a medium works as a intermediary between this earth, we call the earth plane, and the other side of the world of spirit. And we don't do this for frivolous purposes. Mediums do this because they want to help humanity. And I always say, as a spiritualist medium, I practice mediumship to prove the continuity of life, that we do indeed continue to exist past the change called death, and to seek higher knowledge. And you'll be surprised, many people are amazed at the fact that spirit can come in and give their names. I was doing a reading yesterday for a woman, Bonnie, and I enjoyed her. She was very enthusiastic. And I said, Bonnie, I have a gentleman here. He says his name is Bob. She goes, that's my father. I said, well, is he in spirit? She said, yes. He's right here. He's right next to me. And he gave her a message. And then I said, Jerry wants to say hello. And she said, oh my God, that's my grandfather, Bob's father. To me, evidence like that helps people to know that their loved ones, the father and grandfather in this case, are really only a thought away. And they both came in to encourage her in both her work and in her spiritual studies. So I find that spirit communication, if it's done correctly with evidence, can be a great help.
Mm-hmm. Now, part of the problem, though, very often can be, there could be people that are really phonies and pretending to be.
Well, you know, in real estate, they say it's all location, location, location. In mediumship, it is evidence, evidence, evidence. At the New England School of Metaphysics, I tell the student the very first thing they must learn is to give evidence. Before they graduate, everybody can do psychometry, they can give the names of spirits that are present in the room, and they can give a message to people that would be of an uplifting nature. Because if we can't give people evidence, it doesn't matter what else you tell them, it's not going to be believed. So that's the most important thing to work on.
And do you think that everyone has the ability to do this? Obviously, if someone takes classes, they have more of an interest.
Yes, that's true. That's a good point. I think that the people that come to my school are people that have already some psychic gifts, but they want to direct them. They want to perfect them. They want to be sure they're doing the very best they can with their gifts. To answer your question, everyone is psychic to a certain degree. It's kind of like everybody can draw. But that doesn't mean that everybody is a Picasso. You know, only certain people are gifted.
I noticed in your book there was a mention of, I looked at the index, of Arthur Ford.
Yes.
And years ago, I think her name was Pat St. John. She had a group of people come to her house, and I was there, and she said, do you want to stay? And I said, sure. And it was a seance, and I was very impressed where, you know, it was breathing and meditating.
Right.
And then it was in a circle, standing, and then we went to her dining room table.
Right.
And that was very, very interesting because you would say the name. I gave the name of my mother, and someone came up with the, they could smell the purple, like a hyacinth, and that was my mother's favorite.
Oh, wonderful.
And then when she passed away, on the coffee table in the living room, she would save all the cards, like greeting cards people sent to her, and it was tied in with ribbon.
Right.
And somebody picked that up, and there was I don't even know who these people are.
This is amazing. You know, when somebody says, when I died, I was a heavy smoker, and there was I had one pack of cigarettes in my left pocket with just one cigarette left, and my last thought was, got to get a pack of cigarettes. And somebody says, yeah, that was my grandfather Bill. He always smoked, and he just had his last cigarette. That, to me, is evidence. So I think that's exciting,
right,
Sandy.
Because it wouldn't be
very exciting.
Yes.
About the mother's perfume, that's wonderful.
Well, it wasn't the perfume, the actual flower.
The flower, yes.
And she had trained, Pat St. John had trained at the Arthur Ford Foundation.
Oh, wonderful. He was a wonderful teacher.
I don't really know anything about it, except that she said Arthur Ford, and because it was like Ford car, I could remember the name, Arthur Ford.
He did some wonderful work. Later in life, he did help to train mediums. He just was a very gifted person. And Arthur Ford was an ordained minister of the Protestant sect, and he later changed to his denomination to spiritualism. And he ran the first spiritualist church of Manhattan. And he became very famous because he did in the late 1920s, he did the first Houdini seance. And he went into trance. He was a trance medium. His guide Fletcher came through and said, Harry Houdini, who died in 1926, has a message for his wife, Bess. Will you please ask her to come to a seance? And Arthur Ford said, no, I don't want to get involved with that kind of publicity. But one of the members of the congregation knew Bess Houdini, and they arranged a seance. It was in January. It was actually a very cold day. And Bess got out of her sickbed because she was very interested in communicating with her deceased husband. And when Arthur Ford went into trance, his guide Fletcher came through and started joking. He says, your husband's here and he wants to know, did you learn any French? And that was a joke between the Houdinis, because when Bess first was married, she would help her husband Harry out in Europe, especially in Paris. And he was always urging her to learn a little bit more French so she could improve the show. And then Fletcher brought through a message, and he started singing the song Sweet Rosalie. Now this was extremely evidential because the Houdinis had a code, and it was based on the song. Harry Houdini loved to be a fake medium. So what he would do is he'd put a turban on, and he'd be a swami, and he would send his cute little wife into the audience to get objects, and he would close his eyes. And she would tell a gentleman, well, give me something you want the great swami to pick up on, and he might give her a pen. So she would start singing the song Sweet Rosalie, and wherever she started the song represented a letter of the alphabet. So maybe she'd start with sweet, and that would be P. So Houdini would go, oh, I'm picking up pen. Pen, you got a pen. And then we would start clapping like wild. But he wasn't really a swami. He was pretending to be. But it was quite a good act. So when they decoded the message with every letter of the alphabet coming through the song Sweet Rosalie, it came out, the message from Harry Houdini from the other side through Arthur Ford was B-E-L-I-E-V-E, believe. I think that's a perfect message. I really do.
Ooh, and a lot of times I thought they said he never came through with a message.
Well, this is the first one that was done. Mm-hmm. Now, don't ask me why. When it comes to the psychic, this is kind of interesting. People often think about it, and then they'll say, I wonder if that really happened, you know?
Right, yes.
And Bess Houdini later wrote a letter saying she wasn't so sure her husband had come through, but she wrote, the first letter she wrote, she said he absolutely did come through. Mm-hmm. And that is in Arthur Ford's book, Known But Unknown, his biography, that story.
Now, did you also do a Houdini
seance? Many years ago, in 1997, I was asked if I would consider being the medium for the 1997 official Houdini seance, which they do every year. And I really thought about it. I thought, just like Arthur Ford, I wasn't sure I wanted that kind of publicity. You know, I was thinking, I don't know. So I said to the stage manager that called, I said, you know, can I call you back next week? I'd like to think about it. She said, okay. So I was really thinking, maybe I'll call her back and give her another medium's number. Somebody else might like to do it.
Right, yes.
And I was just about to do that a week later, and I was combing my hair, and I saw in the mirror the face of Arthur Ford. And I heard him say very clearly, Houdini has a message for you. And I knew that Arthur Ford had done the first Houdini seance, so I felt that was a good omen that he wanted me to do the seance and that he would help me. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was fairly successful. We all got on the stage of the Goodspeed Opera House, which is a magnificent building, absolutely magnificent. And they asked me what I wanted, and a seance should have a big round table, right? And I asked that they limit the participants to 12 and that we all have a glass of water. Do you know why I always ask for water at a seance?
No.
Because water is a conductor of spirit energy.
I know some people would say to have a glass of water if you want to remember.
It's important.
Do it without having a glass of water.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be water in one of those water bottles. It should be open because you want the energy from the water to be present. So we had that. And I started the seance by doing readings for the audience. And I read for about 20 people I'd never met before. There were 400 people in the audience. And I think I had like a 98% accuracy that evening. Usually I'm about 85%. But it was very accurate. So I felt good because I thought I must be getting some excellent assistance from my guides. And then I sat down, I started doing readings for the participants. And I went to Timothy Goulan, who was the young actor that played Harry Houdini. And I said, Harry Houdini's here. And he says, you're not really a magician, and you're having a lot of trouble with the magic tricks. And he said, yes, that's true. And he says he's trying to help you. And then he said, about 2 weeks ago, your left shoulder was injured, and you were so discouraged you weren't even going to go on. But he said, somehow I got through to you, and you went on. And he laughed. He said, that's true. And then he talked a little bit about the show. And Houdini felt the play Metamorphosis was a bit too long for Broadway. He says if it goes to Broadway, they're going to have to cut it back a little bit. And so I thought that was evidential. I did. But of course, the Houdini Society only have one test, which they were sneaky about. They didn't really tell me about ahead of time. They place an old set of handcuffs that belonged to Harry Houdini in the center of the seance table. And the only way the Houdini Society will believe that Houdini spirit comes through a seance is if those handcuffs are opened by Harry Houdini's spirit, which has never happened, and I firmly believe never will, because that's not how spirit comes through. Spirit comes through clairaudiently by talking to the medium, clairvoyantly by appearing, and clairsentiently by transferring messages. But it was a very interesting evening, and it was actually was a lot of fun. It was done at midnight on October 31st.
And what year do you remember?
1997.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and that's because the play Metamorphosis was running at the Goodspeed Opera House.
Oh.
And it was a great play, it really was. Yeah.
And each year they have it in a different location.
They have it they try to pick a location that's germane to Houdini. They've actually had Ethel Myers, a very famous New York medium, make communication with Houdini in his New York apartment. Sidney Rader told me that, because I said, has any medium ever brought Houdini through? And he goes, yes, Elaine, really? Ethel Myers brought through quite a bit. I knew Ethel Myers. I said, okay, because I could be a little skeptical too.
Now, I would think maybe it would be possible that the handcuffs would be open. If you look at materialization.
Right, but it's very
table tipping.
unusual. I'll tell you why, because Houdini would have to come through so strong. Remember, these are handcuffs that he put together that you can't get out of. So it's not really a fair test. But anyway, at the end, they tricked me a bit. You know how you feel when you're tricked?
Yes, yeah.
So they shoved this envelope, and they said, what's in the envelope? And I'm like, okay. I said, well, I see a document. I see an oak frame. I see it being taken from a display case. And Sidney Radar said, no. And you know what happens to spirit when you say, no?
What?
Spirit jumps away. They didn't really want to be involved. So anyway, he did say it was a letter that Harry Houdini had signed, and it was in a frame, but he said he couldn't tell where it came from exactly.
Oh, so you really did have it?
As much as I could get.
Yes.
But
why did she say no?
He. Because unfortunately, many magicians are non-believers. They tend to feel, they have different views, but they're a little bit skeptical of spiritualists. Now, John Dunninger, who wrote a wonderful book on the spirit cabinet, spent his time debunking fake spiritualists because he really felt too many of them faked materializations, which is probably true to some extent. And Houdini himself was a skeptic, yeah. Yeah.
And today, not only in the metaphysical world, but also when you look at the finances and the government, look at the news today and all the corruption going on. So it's always hard to, when you come out with the word believe, what can you truly believe? Well,
you can believe facts, you can believe evidence, you can believe when spirit tells you things that would no longer be known to you. I thought it was interesting. I had a case of a gentleman, he was a bartender from New Haven. He came to see me for a mediumship session, and his little girl was 3 years old, and she was dying. She had a heart condition. And I went into trance, and he told me this afterwards. He says, Elaine, you told us that we were going to see doctors at the Yale New Haven Hospital, and I didn't believe you. And you said, don't worry, they're going to ask you to do an experimental procedure, and you're going to hear these words. We think this procedure will save your life, your daughter's life, but it has never been done before. And he came back a year later, his daughter was still alive, and I get goosebumps when I hear this. And he said, you know what your spirit guide said? I said, I don't know, I'm a trance medium. He said, they said that we would be given the option of having a procedure done for our daughter that had never been done before, and we decided to try it. It was her only hope. And it did give her more years of life. And that's why I like doing this work. I like helping people.
Oh, absolutely.
It's the most important
yes.
thing.
Now, I know that you have 4 children,
Yes.
a husband, several grandchildren.
Yes.
Now, do you ever do mediumship or psychic work with them, or is it different when it comes to your family?
Oh, well, my husband's a crack clairvoyant. He goes to all the spiritualist camps with me. He's very good on the technical aspect of clairvoyance. And he loves going to Lilydale and Camp Chesterfield. In fact, he came today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If anybody met him, though, they would
No,
never
he's
think.
very down to earth, very
Yes,
down to earth.
yeah.
My children all are busy professionals. I have a doctor, a lawyer, a biologist, and a philosopher, and they're kind of making their way in the world. I have more hope for my grandchildren. I do. Maybe it'll be passed on through them.
Do you think that it is passed on
I
genetically?
definitely do. My grandmother was Irish, and she was a natural clairvoyant and extremely gifted. One time, my Uncle John was buying gifts for his fiancée, Aunt Polly, and Aunt Polly was interested in having my grandmother do a reading. And so she took a deck of playing cards, and she goes, "Oh, Polly, I see a beautiful black leather gloves. They're beautiful. You're going to love it." And then she said, "Oh, a white silk scarf. How elegant." And then she said, "Oh, and this ring. It's a beautiful round diamond. It's wonderful." And my uncle was furious because he had bought all those gifts and he wanted them to be a surprise for his lovely girlfriend. And he said to his mother after she's left, "How could you go in my room and go through all my stuff?" And my grandmother just scratched her head. She said, "You know, John, I would never do that. The spirits told me." So she would get in trouble if she was so accurate.
Uh-huh.
But she was fun too. And she used to always say, "Don't worry about the spirits." She said, "The people you need to worry about are the people that are alive. The spirits are there to protect and help you."
My father used to say, "You don't need to be afraid of the dead. It's the living you have to be
That's
careful
correct.
of."
That is
Yes.
correct.
And time went by so
Oh, it did.
fast
It was
with all your
fun.
marvelous stories. And our time has come to an end. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, Sally.
And I'm glad you've written so many different books.
Right,
And
thank you.
To our audience, I'd like to say thank you for watching. And again, if you have any questions that you would have about the program or would like to contact Elaine Kuzmeskus, you can always email us at practicaltalktime@yahoo.com. I hope you enjoyed the show.